What happens when one of comedy's most fearless voices sits down with a talk show host who refuses to listen? In just 47 seconds, a simple question turns into an explosive confrontation that ends with a guest walking off set, leaving the entire panel speechless and the audience in complete shock. Dave Chappelle walked onto the View set that morning with his usual calm energy. The audience clapped as he took his seat at the table, smiling and waving. Whoopi Goldberg sat at the head of the table, with Sunny Hostin to her right, Joy Behar next to her, and Sarah Haynes and Alyssa Farah Griffin filling out the rest of the panel. "Welcome, welcome," Whoopi said, gesturing for everyone to settle down. "We are so excited to have you here today." Dave nodded, still smiling. "Happy to be here. Thanks for having me." The first few minutes went smoothly. They talked about his latest projects, his comedy tour, and some lighthearted topics. The audience laughed at his jokes. Everything seemed normal. But then Sunny Hostin leaned forward, and her tone shifted completely. "So Dave, I want to ask you about something," Sunny said, her voice getting sharper. "Your comedy has been criticized by many people who say you punch down at marginalized communities. How do you justify that?" Dave's smile faded slightly. He took a breath. "Well, I think comedy is about exploring difficult topics. I don't believe I punch down. I try to find truth in uncomfortable places." Sunny shook her head before he even finished. "But that's not what people are saying. People are saying you use your platform irresponsibly. Don't you think you have a responsibility to be more sensitive?" "I think I have a responsibility to be honest," Dave replied, keeping his voice steady. "Comedy has always pushed boundaries. That's the whole point." "Pushed boundaries?" Sunny's voice rose. "Or pushed people who are already struggling further into the margins. There's a difference, Dave." Joy Behar jumped in, trying to lighten the mood. "Well, comedy is subjective, right? What one person finds funny, another might not." But Sunny wasn't backing down. "No, Joy, this isn't about subjective humor. This is about harm. Real harm to real people." Dave leaned back in his chair. "Sunny, I hear what you're saying, but I disagree. I've spent my entire career speaking truth to power, talking about race, talking about inequality. I've never targeted people who are vulnerable." "That's exactly what you've done," Sunny shot back. "And you hide behind the excuse of comedy. You know what? I think you've become exactly what you used to criticize. You've become the establishment." The audience gasped. Even Whoopi looked surprised. Dave stayed calm, but his jaw tightened. "The establishment? I walked away from $50 million because I refused to compromise my integrity. I don't think you understand what you're talking about." "Oh, I understand perfectly," Sunny said, her voice dripping with condescension. "I understand that you've built a career on being provocative, and now you can't handle being challenged." Sarah Haynes tried to intervene. "Maybe we should take a step back here." But Sunny kept going. "You know what your problem is, Dave. You think because you're famous, because you're successful, that you're above criticism. You think you can say whatever you want and hide behind the label of comedy." Dave's expression hardened. "I never said I'm above criticism. But there's a difference between criticism and what you're doing right now, which is putting words in my mouth and making assumptions about my intentions." "Assumptions?" Sunny laughed, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. "I'm basing this on your actual work. Your actual words." Whoopi finally stepped in. "Okay, let's take a breath here." But Sunny ignored her. "You want to know what I really think? I think you're a coward. I think you target people who can't fight back because it's easy, and then you play the victim when anyone calls you out." The studio went completely silent. You could hear people in the audience shifting in their seats. Dave stared at Sunny for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. "You just called me a coward on national television, without knowing me, without understanding the context of my work or my life. You made a judgment about who I am as a person based on your interpretation of my art. I made a judgment based on your actions, Sunny replied, not backing down even an inch. Alyssa Farrah Griffin spoke up, her voice cautious. Sunny, maybe that was a bit harsh. Was it? Sunny turned to Alyssa. We sit here every day talking about accountability, about holding people responsible for their words and actions. Why should Dave Chappelle get a pass? Dave shook his head slowly. I'm not asking for a pass. I'm asking for a conversation, not an ambush. There's a difference between a discussion and what you're doing. An ambush? Sunny's voice went up another notch. You came on a talk show. We talk. That's what we do. If you can't handle tough questions, maybe you shouldn't be here. Tough questions are fine, Dave said, his patience clearly wearing thin. But you're not asking questions. You're making accusations and attacking my character. Joy tried again to calm things down. Let's all just take a moment. But Sunny was on a roll. You know what? This is exactly what I expected. A man who dishes it out but can't take it. You've made millions making fun of everyone else, but the second someone challenges you, you fall apart. Fall apart? Dave repeated, his voice rising for the first time. I'm sitting here calmly trying to have a conversation while you insult me repeatedly. And how is that falling apart? Because you're deflecting, Sunny said. You won't address the actual harm your comedy causes. You just want to talk about your intentions and your integrity? Whoopi raised her voice. Sunny, I think we need to move on. Sunny ignored her completely. No, Whoopi. This is important. We have a responsibility to our audience to ask these questions. Dave leaned forward, looking directly at Sunny. Let me ask you something. Have you ever actually listened to one of my specials? All the way through? Or did you just read headlines and make up your mind? Sunny's face flushed. I don't need to watch every second of your work to understand the impact it has. That's exactly my point, Dave said. You're judging me without the full context. You're doing exactly what you're accusing me of doing. That's completely different, Sunny snapped. How? Dave asked. How is it different? Sunny paused, then pivoted. Because I'm not the one with the massive platform. I'm not the one with millions of fans who hang on my every word. You have power, Dave. Real power. And you use it irresponsibly. Sarah Haynes jumped in. I think what Sunny is trying to say is that with great reach comes great responsibility. Dave nodded at Sarah. I agree with that completely. But responsibility doesn't mean silence. It doesn't mean I can't talk about difficult subjects. Sunny rolled her eyes. There you go again, playing the victim. Poor Dave Chappelle, so silenced, so oppressed. Alyssa looked uncomfortable. Sunny, come on. No, Alyssa, Sunny said. I'm tired of celebrities coming on here expecting us to just softball them. We're supposed to be journalists. We're supposed to ask hard questions. There's a difference between hard questions and hostility, Dave said quietly. Sunny laughed again, that same cold laugh. Hostility? You haven't seen hostility. You've faced actual criticism for the first time in years, and you can't handle it. Joy Behar looked at Whoopi, clearly wanting her to step in. Whoopi tried again. I think we should take a commercial break. Why? Sunny asked, turning to Whoopi. Because it's getting uncomfortable? Good. Sometimes the truth is uncomfortable. Dave stood up slowly, reaching for his microphone pack. What are you doing? Sunny asked. I'm leaving, Dave said simply, unclipping his microphone. Oh, perfect, Sunny said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Run away! That's exactly what I expected. Dave stopped and looked at her. I'm not running away. I'm choosing not to participate in whatever this is. You invited me here for a conversation, but you clearly just wanted someone to attack. I wanted accountability, Sunny said. No, Dave replied, shaking his head. You wanted a target. You made up your mind about me before I even sat down. This was never going to be a fair conversation. Whoopi stood up. Dave, please, let's just take a breath. Dave looked at Whoopi, and his expression softened slightly. Whoopi, I respect you. I always have. but I can't sit here and be disrespected like this. I've been called a coward, told I'm a sellout, accused of harming people. All because this one person," he gestured to Sunny, "decided she knows everything about me based on her own biased interpretation." Sunny stood up too. "Biased? I'm biased for calling out harmful behavior?" "You're biased because you refuse to even consider that you might be wrong," Dave said. "You won't listen. You won't have an actual dialogue. You just want to lecture and condemn." "Because what you do is condemnable," Sunny fired back. The audience was completely silent now. Some people looked shocked. Others looked angry. A few were recording on their phones. Dave put his microphone on the table. "You know what the saddest part of this is? I actually came here in good faith. I thought we could have a real conversation about comedy, about art, about the difficult balance between free expression and sensitivity. But you never wanted that conversation." "Don't you dare," Sunny said, her voice shaking now with anger. "Don't you dare turn this around on me. You're the one who makes harmful content. You're the one who refuses to take responsibility." "Responsibility for what?" Dave asked, his voice rising to match hers. "For making people laugh? For talking about my own experiences? For refusing to be silent about things that matter to me?" "For hurting people," Sunny shouted. "Who did I hurt?" Dave shouted back. "Name one person. Give me one specific example of someone I directly harmed." Sunny opened her mouth, then closed it. "You can't," Dave said quietly, "because you're talking in abstractions. You're talking about hypothetical harm to hypothetical people. Meanwhile, you just spent the last 15 minutes attacking me personally, calling me names, questioning my character, all on live television." Joy looked at the camera nervously. Sarah had her hand over her mouth. Alyssa was staring at the table. Whoopi tried one more time. "Dave, Sunny, can we please just calm down and talk about this rationally?" "There's no point," Dave said. "I tried to talk rationally. I tried to engage. But every time I opened my mouth, I was interrupted, insulted, or dismissed. This isn't a conversation. This is a performance. And I'm not interested in being a prop for someone else's moral superiority." Sunny's eyes flashed. "Moral superiority? How dare you? I'm trying to hold you accountable for the damage you've done." "What damage?" Dave asked again. "Be specific. Tell me exactly what damage I've done." "You've made it acceptable to mock vulnerable people," Sunny said. "I've never mocked vulnerable people," Dave replied. "I've mocked power. I've mocked hypocrisy. I've mocked the systems that create vulnerability. But I've never attacked the vulnerable themselves." "That's your interpretation," Sunny said. "And yours is the only one that matters?" Dave asked. They stared at each other for a long moment. "You know what?" Dave said finally. "I've spent my entire career fighting against people who want to control what I say and how I think. I've walked away from money, from fame, from everything, because I refused to compromise my voice. I'm not about to start now, just because you think you know better than me about my own art." "Then leave," Sunny said coldly. "If you can't handle being challenged, go." Dave picked up his jacket from the back of the chair. "I'm not leaving because I can't handle being challenged. I'm leaving because this stopped being a challenge about 10 minutes ago and became a personal attack. There's a difference." He looked at the other women at the table. "Joy, Sarah, Alyssa, Whoopi, thank you for having me. I'm sorry this didn't go the way anyone hoped." Whoopi looked sad. "Dave, we're sorry too." "Don't apologize for me," Sunny snapped at Whoopi. "I'm not sorry. Someone needed to say these things to him." Dave looked at Sunny one last time. "You didn't need to say anything to me. You wanted to. There's a difference. You wanted to feel righteous. You wanted to be the hero who took down the problematic comedian. But all you did was prove that you're more interested in performing outrage than actually understanding people." "Get out," Sunny said, her voice low and angry. "I am," Dave said. "But before I go, Let me say this. Comedy is supposed to make people uncomfortable. It's supposed to challenge the way we think. It's supposed to push boundaries. If comedy only said things everyone already agreed with, it would be worthless. And if you can't understand that basic truth about art, then you have no business critiquing it. He walked toward the exit. Sunny called after him. You're proving my point right now. You're running away from accountability. Dave stopped at the edge of the stage and turned around. No, Sunny. I'm walking away from self-righteousness. From someone who thinks they have all the answers. From someone who refuses to listen to anyone who disagrees with them. That's not accountability. That's tyranny. Don't you lecture me about tyranny, Sunny said. That's her voice shaking. Then don't lecture me about comedy, Dave replied. You don't get to decide what's funny. You don't get to decide what's acceptable. And you definitely don't get to decide who I am based on your limited understanding of my work. With that, he walked off the stage. The camera stayed on the panel. Sunny sat down hard in her chair, her face red. Joy and Sarah exchanged worried glances. Alyssa looked like she wanted to disappear. Whoopi put her head in her hands. The audience sat in stunned silence. Finally, Whoopi looked up at the camera. We're going to take a break. But before they could cut to commercial, Sunny spoke again, her voice loud enough for the microphones to catch. Good riddance. We don't need people like that on this show. Joy turned to her. Sunny, maybe you should stop talking. Why? Sunny demanded. Because I told the truth? Because I didn't kiss his feet like everyone else does? Because you just chased a guest off our show, Sarah said quietly. On live television. He chose to leave, Sunny said defensively. I didn't force him to do anything. You called him a coward, Alyssa pointed out. You attacked him personally, over and over again. Because he deserved it, Sunny insisted. Whoopi shook her head. Whether he deserved it or not, that's not how we do things here. We have conversations. We don't ambush people. I didn't ambush anyone, Sunny said, but her voice was less certain now. You did, Joy said firmly. You went after him from the start. You weren't interested in his perspective. You just wanted to make your point. My point was valid, Sunny said. Maybe, Whoopi said, but the way you made it wasn't, and now we have a situation. The stage manager was frantically gesturing to cut to commercial. Finally, the camera feed switched. Backstage, Dave was already gone. Security confirmed he'd left the building immediately. He didn't stop to talk to anyone. He didn't make any statements. He simply walked out of the studio, got in his car, and drove away. Back on set, the panel sat in uncomfortable silence during the commercial break. Sunny scrolled through her phone, her expression defiant, but her hands shaking slightly. Joy and Sarah whispered to each other. Alyssa stared into space. Whoopi talked quietly with the producers. When they came back from commercial, Whoopi addressed the camera alone. We apologize for what just happened. Things got heated, and our guest decided to leave. We're going to move on to our next segment now. She didn't mention Dave by name again. She didn't explain what happened. She just moved forward, trying to salvage the rest of the show. But the damage was done. The tension was palpable. Sunny sat stiffly in her chair, barely participating in the rest of the show. The other hosts seemed distracted, uncomfortable. The audience could feel it. During the next commercial break, Joy leaned over to Sunny. What were you thinking? I was thinking someone needed to hold him accountable, Sunny replied. By calling him a coward? Joy asked. By attacking him personally? I stand by everything I said, Sunny declared. Joy shook her head. That's going to be a problem. The rest of the show limped along. They covered their planned topics, but the energy was gone. The joy was gone. Everything felt forced and fake. When the show finally ended, the panel dispersed quickly. Sunny went straight to her dressing room and closed the door. Whoopi stayed on set, talking with producers about what to do next. Joy and Sarah walked out together, both looking drained. In her dressing room, Sunny sat alone, replaying the confrontation in her mind. Part of her felt justified. She'd said what she believed. She'd stood up for what she thought was right. But another part of her, a smaller part she didn't want to acknowledge, wondered if maybe she'd gone too far. If maybe she'd let her emotions override her professionalism. If maybe she'd made a mistake. But she pushed those thoughts away. She'd done what she had to do. She'd held a powerful man accountable. That was her job. That was what she was supposed to do. She told herself that over and over. But the uneasy feeling in her stomach wouldn't go away. Meanwhile, across the city, Dave sat in his hotel room. He wasn't angry anymore. He was just tired. Tired of having to defend himself. Tired of being misunderstood. Tired of people deciding who he was without actually knowing him. He thought about the confrontation. He thought about